Another inmate passed away in the New York Department of Corrections last night. We have to talk about that as well as the strike that happened that finally ended. Man, do I have a lot to say. If you're new here, hi, my name is Jess. I'm a person in long-term recovery who has in fact been to prison. Ta-da! It's not a flex, it's just a fact. If you want to follow me on any other social media platform, TikTok, Instagram, Patreon, that's $2. It's only ever going to be $2. Plus I added an extra tier. So go check that out. All of it is linked down below, as well as my vlog channel, my Facebook, and my OF. Things change, move on. Without further ado, let's kick this thing off. If you did not catch my previous video about this, I will link it on the card up there. I will also link it in the description box down there. To catch you up really quickly, a couple of months back, New York Department of Corrections at Marcy, which is right outside of my hometown. I've known a lot of people that have done time in Marcy. The corrections officers there beat and tortured Robert Brooks, all on body cam footage, not even caring at all. Like literally they know they're being recorded and they still did what they did to him. Brutally beat him for hours until he passed away. 14 officers were arrested and charged in the case of Robert Brooks. I'm sorry, I believe a nurse was in there too. 6 of them were charged with murder. Then another man is killed right across the street in another facility in New York. It's called Oneida. And this young man's name was Messiah. He was 22. He was beaten at Midstate, which is next to Marcy. And the inmates said immediately that the officers brutally attacked him and killed him in the same way that they did Robert Brooks. Let me be very clear here. This is not new. This is not new. This has been happening in the New York Department of Corrections for literally forever, for decades. That brings us to inmate number 3. And more have died, but inmate number 3, I'm probably not going to pronounce his name right, but it's Ariel Quidone. He became very ill and he passed away. And the family is asking, please let us know what happened. They're not getting a lot of answers. All that Doc said was that he got very sick. The Department of Corrections would not confirm he died, but said a person experienced a medical emergency while in custody on March 13th and was taken to Elmhurst Hospital. Those are not all of the inmates that died in the New York Department of Corrections this year. During an illegal strike from corrections officers, 6 people, I believe, died, including 61-year-old Jonathan Grant. He was pronounced dead last month after he was found unresponsive in his cell at the Auburn Correctional Facility amid the ongoing labor strike. Although it is unclear if prison staff played a role in his death, the fact of it is he died. The reason why that strike was illegal is because, per the Taylor's Act, corrections officers have to stay on post. They're taking care of people. It would be the same thing if I was a nurse and I worked in a nursing home. I have to stay there until my shift is relieved because we were taking care of people, right? Same thing. So it was illegal for them to go on strike. They went on strike. More inmates were hurt because of that. The whole time they're whining and complaining about the HALT Act, which limits the use of solitary confinement. During the strike, inmates are being hurt, and the governor is trying to work out deals with them to make sure that they, feel safer within the walls. Finally, New York corrections officers reached an agreement with the governor and with the union. They would return to work with no penalties. They wouldn't, be prosecuted for what they did. They wouldn't lose their benefits or anything like that. And the state of New York decided that they were going to kind of revise the HALT Act, and they're looking it over. They suspended it for 90 days. It was just a lot of back and forth. And the whole time that they were on strike, the National Guard had to be there to make sure inmates were okay. And I promise you, when things like that happen, inmates are not okay. They're not receiving proper food, proper care, medical treatment, stuff like that. Showers even. Like, the conditions inside get kind of rough when shit on the outside is popping off like that and guards are not going to work. I want officers to feel safe in prisons, of course. I know I advocate for inmates all of the time, but I also advocate for corrections officers too. I'm just very frustrated with the New York Department of Corrections because all they seem to know how to do is beat you and throw you in solitary confinement. So when they were going on strike complaining that the HALT Act limited the use of solitary confinement, I'm like, dude, learn how to de-escalate some shit. Learn how to de-escalate situations. Learn how to get respect from inmates. You're afraid for your life because inmates are watching you murder other inmates. I would be afraid too if I was treating inmates like shit. I would be exhausted having to work ridiculous hours. And that was another thing that they asked for, is to not mandate them for 24 hours, which I 1,000% agree with. No one should work a 24-hour shift. But when it comes to law enforcement, corrections officers, they're seeing the same kind of things that the inmates are seeing, right? Compassion fatigue is a very real thing. You become numb to the violence. You become desensitized to it. And because of that, it completely rewires your brain. So I don't think that corrections officers should be working those extremely long shifts. I think they all need to be in therapy, because we all need therapy, right? And they have absolutely no fucking right to beat inmates to death. Having been to prison, okay, having lived in New York, having friends and family, men, that have gone to these facilities that we're talking about, it seems as though, and I can't prove this, this is just my biased opinion, take it with a grain of salt, okay? I can't prove this. The strike seems to me as though it was a retaliation for Robert Brooks and for 14 people being charged. And I can't confirm that, but just kind of felt that way, you know? Just like watching that body cam footage of them beat him to literal death, shove things in his mouth, all of that. That also feels like retaliation, because they couldn't just throw him in solitary confinement. And I don't care what that inmate does, corrections officers cannot beat you to death. The sentence is your freedom being taken away. The sentence is not murder. And if it is the death penalty, there's a process for that. You can't just randomly get frustrated with an inmate and beat him to death. Well, New York corrections officers could, until now, because now it's national news. What I find crazy is that the man that passed away at Mid-State Correctional Facility, 11 officers were put on suspension because the governor said that this man's death, she said it was very concerning. And just the way that I don't have her direct quote right in front of me right now, but the way that she talked about it kind of mirrored that of Robert Brooks. According to a court filing by the state attorney, they said there is probable cause to believe that as many as 9 corrections officers either caused or could be implemented in Messiah's death. It's horrifying that the state of New York has taken this long to even take notice of what's happening behind those walls. They've ignored it for a really long time, but that's the thing when it comes to karma, right? Like, who knows how many officers have gotten away with murder behind those walls. So guards will now only work a 12-hour shift, and the State Department is not going to punish the officers that return to work. Part of their deal to return to work, it was like 80% or something of the staff members had to return to work for them to receive the deal that they received. And they met that basically. Now, the officers that did not return to work, there's about 2,000 of them, I believe, have been officially fired by the DOC. And I don't think those 2,000 officers care about that, because they didn't want to go back to work. They quit, so they were fired. Okay. But those 2,000 officers are now complaining because there seems to be sort of a blacklist on them, where they can't get jobs elsewhere because they participated in an unsanctioned and illegal strike. Do I think that the governor should blacklist the 2,000 COs that did not return to work? No, probably not. That's probably not fair. But that's karma. I'm sorry, it's just karma. New York corrections officers treat inmates like absolute trash, and they beat them and they murder them. Are there good COs in there? Yes. Overwhelmingly, though, my experience and the experience of a lot of my friends and family members, people that you've even heard on this channel before over the years, our experience is that they are brutal, they will beat you to death, and they're just crazy. A few of the officers that were involved in Robert Brooks' murder assaulted my ex-boyfriend. I recognize their faces. I recognize their name. The reason why they have been able to get away with all of this for so long, assault, rape, murder, is because the community is like, well, you shouldn't have broken the law. Like, we have become so desensitized just from talking about people in prison. Sometimes the staff members are 10 times worse than the inmates, and they just didn't get caught yet. I believe that what happened to Robert Brooks is exactly what happened to my friend Michael Schimmelhorn, who I talked about a couple years ago on this channel as well. He had the same exact situation go on where he was hurt. And everything that we know is very vague about that. And I would love another investigation, but he was hurt very badly. They took him to the hospital. He came back from the hospital. They put him in solitary confinement and he died. They said that he had an aneurysm, maybe from blunt force trauma. right? Who knows? We won't ever know because there wasn't body cam footage at the time available. So we don't know. But it's the same thing over and over and over and over again. They beat your ass. They take you to the infirmary and or an outside hospital. They bring you back, you die, or you die at the hospital. It's a pattern. The National Guard will stay at some facilities to provide extra support for the time being. And, all I can do is hope that things change and that there's transparency in the Department of Corrections. All of the former staff members that are probably going to spend the rest of their life in prison for murder, you're going to wish you didn't fight to suspend the HALT Act. Solitary confinement is a motherfucker. But that doesn't matter. You're going to be in protective custody, probably. I don't feel bad for any of you. With all of that being said, I'm going to end today's video here. As always, I love you guys. Stay safe, stay sober, whatever that looks like to you. Please do not break the law. It is not fucking worth it. And I'll see y'all in my next one.